This is a discussion, unmute myself. This is a discussion on chapter 2, Universal Systems. So I will share my screen and we will get right to it. So universal systems. There are systems that govern the way we think and we act and our attitudes towards things in every culture. So the main systems that are found in all cultures are our economic system, political system, educational system, marriage and family system, and then our social hierarchies and interaction. So why is all of this important in business, right? Because we're talking about this from the perspective of business. Why is my screen sharing, Zoom sharing? So, when we're focusing on conducting business internationally, one of the first things that we will concern ourselves with is country risk. And you can think of country risk simply as the political and economic stability of a country. But the bigger the differences there are between cultures, the higher the opportunities there are for failure. So it's important that we pay attention and that we work within our parameters to understand other cultures, to mitigate the risks, and to at least walk in with eyes wide open if the changes are very big that we're facing. So this is from 2017, and country risk outlook. So the green is low risk, the yellow is medium risk, orange is severe, and actually it's sensitive risk, and red is high risk. So keep in mind that this is a chart from an American perspective. A country risk assessment from another cultural perspective would look very different. Hope that makes sense. Russia, for example, is not going to look at doing business with its neighboring countries as that high risk. China is not going to look at doing business with neighboring countries as something that's as high risk. So it's our cultural perspectives that play into how we think of these cultural risks or economic risks. So economic systems are the way in which the products that meet material needs of the people are produced, distributed, and consumed. So what are we concerned with as far as economic systems? So we have three different types of economic systems. We have command and market, and then we have mixed, okay? So in command, government owns most of the resources. In market, most of the resources are privately owned. In command, there is low degree of economic freedom. In market, there is high. The philosophical anchor of a command economy is communism. Of a market economy is capitalism. And a mixed economy is socialism. Things that play into our economic development and our views of economic development are the economic features, political, legal factors, and then cultural factors. And you can read through this list. Um, these are all different points that are studied culture to culture to evaluate um, how developed an economy is. If we look at this from a world income perspective, the dark, what would this be, a mauve color? Um, those are our high income areas. The peach is upper middle income, light blue is lower middle income, and dark blue is low income. So that gives you a bit of a perspective of how, even though there are large variations in income in those areas, they're similar standards of living. Then we have political systems. So the formal institutions that constitute a government, like the legislative bodies, political parties, lobbying groups, trade unions. The system also defines how these groups interact with each other, and maybe even what is allowed. So in the political systems, we have totalitarianism, socialism, and democracy, and they are not mutually exclusive. So there are combinations of these. Okay? So there is really no pure democracy, but on the democracy side, a democratic government would be more conservative, reactionary, liberal, or radical. And on the autocratic government, going towards totalitarianism, we have authoritarian, fascist, communist, and dictatorship. So a totalitarian government controls all economic and political matters. It could be theocratic or religious based, or it could be secular. A state party is led by a dictator. Membership is mandatory for those who want to advance. Power is sustained via secret police, propaganda, regulation of free discussion and criticism. Today, some countries in the Middle East and Africa, Cuba, North Korea, are totalitarian. Ex-totalitarian states tend to have much government intervention and bureaucracy, much more than countries that have been long-term capitalistic. Socialism, capital is vested in the state and used primarily as a means of production rather than for profit. Group welfare outweighs individual welfare, and a lot is done to help groups. So in a socialist government, there's going to be more health care, there's going to be more free education, etc. Government's role is to control the basic means of production, distribution, and commercial activity. Socialism occurs in much of the world as social democracy, like Western Europe, Brazil, and India. Government intervention is present in the private sector. Corporate income tax rates are higher to support the government distribution of goods. Then under democracy, the idea is that economic activity occurs freely based on the market forces. We have more limited government. The government performs only what they view as essential. that serves all citizens, like national defense, maintaining law and order, foreign relations, and a basic infrastructure. Private property rights, so we have an ability to own property and assets to increase our own individualistic gain, accumulating private wealth, and property includes land, buildings, stocks, contracts, and patents. It encourages initiative, ambition, and innovation, but it does not encourage overall societal welfare, if you will. So here are some countries that are largely one or the other. So elements of totalitarianism are found in Cuba, North Korea, Eritrea, Sudan, Equatorial Guinea, Zimbabwe. Socialist countries are Bolivia, China, Egypt, India, Romania, Russia, Venezuela, are some examples. And largely democratic governments are Australia, Canada, Japan, New Zealand, United States, most European countries, most Latin American countries. So there is a relationship between economic and political freedom. And the more political freedom you have, the more economic freedom you have as well. Educational systems. So a set of formal or informal means of passing on information, knowledge, and culture. And the system of education is more formal in some countries, less formal in others. The availability of education and who education is available for, and you have varieties in the types of higher education. In the US, we go for liberal arts. In other countries, apprenticeships, and others, technical training. Literacy rates also play into that educational system, into the cultural mindset, and this gives you some percentages of those who can read. According to this chart, no one reaches 100%, including the United States. And let's see, there are quite a few countries that are above 80% literacy rate and even above 90%. And I find it interesting because I know very little about Afghanistan, that their literacy rate is on the lower side. They're not the lowest, however. Okay, there are countries that, well, there are a number of countries in Africa that are still in the 30% literacy rate. So here are some countries. The whited out areas, there is no data available, but this gives you some idea as to the countries that are literate. You look at North America, Europe, Australia, the four most southern countries in West Africa or in Southern Africa, China, Russia, that whole area, Japan, literacy rate tends to be in the 90 percentile or above. A large portion of Central and South America are in that 81 to 90%, and the lowest literacy rates are in Africa. Marriage and family systems. So our attitudes, beliefs, and practices related to marriage and the family. This I thought was really interesting. How can I show the whole thing? Naming systems around the world. So how are our names formed? The color coding of the given names, of the names versus the countries. So English-speaking countries, most of Europe, northern East India and Thailand. Um, John William, you have two given names, and then the last name is the father's family name. In Eastern Slavic countries, Russia, Ukraine, you have a given name, you have a father's first name, you have a masculine gender or feminine gender suffix, and then you have the father's family name. In Iceland, you have two given names. Then you have father's first name and son. So the last name is, like my dad's name is Earl, and it would be Earl's daughter. Okay, Kimberly Sue, Earl's daughter. In East Asia, Philippines, and Vietnam, you have the father's family name and then a given name. So I would be Pisho Kim, okay, for example. Arab countries, North Africa, and Iran, you have a given name, you have a word translating to son of, and then you have the father's first name. And let's jump down to Nigeria. Nigeria, you have a given name, a word that translates son of, and then father's first name. In Myanmar or Burma, you have father's first name, paternal grandmother's name, and then mother's family name. Spanish, Portuguese countries also, the last name is the mother's family name. And it's like Spanish, Portuguese, it would be first like given names, then the father's family name, then the mother's family name. So when I was growing up in Brazil, I had friends, 4 siblings, 3 girls and a guy. And so they had first and second given names, then father's name, mother's name. Okay. And some of them, not all of them, had father's mother's name in there too, and they had 5 names. When each of them got married, they passed on to their children whichever names they wanted. There was hardly a rhyme or reason. And the funny thing is, when the women got married, they chose which of their 3 family names they were going to keep. And it can be a lot more structured than that, but what do you do when your name starts to accumulate 4, 5, 6 surnames? So interesting. South India, you have the clan, ancestral, hometown, given names, and the caste system designation. So I also thought that was very interesting. Marriage and family systems. So this is the average age at marriage. So in many parts of Central and West Africa, the marriage age is much younger, but it's gone up. An average age of 20 years old is much higher than it used to be. And then if you look at Iceland, the northern European countries, Germany, France, South Africa, the average age of marriage is 34.5. The US and Canada are somewhere in between there. So there are financial factors and there are financial, religious, economic factors that all play into the marriage age. Marriage and divorce rates in different countries. Mauritius, Mauritius, I have a hard time saying that one, has a very high marriage rate and a very low divorce rate. Mexico, Ireland, Greece, Slovenia, China are all pretty low divorce rates. Russia has the highest. United States, Lithuania, Cuba, Czech Republic, Estonia have your highest divorce rates. Here's another one. This is religion and living arrangements around the world. So 15%, so the percent of families that live with extended family, US, Canada, Iran, and Norway, Sweden have some of the lowest percentages of families, of extended families living together. And then you can see the dark yellow, whatever this color is. So Namibia, 62% of families live in extended families. You see 58% in Nepal, 54% in India, 58% in Pakistan. You see some of these in the 50 percentile. Again, there may be economic reasons, there may be religious reasons, there may simply be cultural reasons of why countries would have a high percentage of people sharing real estate. Okay. But culture, religion, and economics are the highest factors. So there you go, an overview of the universal systems. And the reason this is important, as you're writing your paper or you're developing your website, these are very important factors for you to highlight in a business situation. Think, for example, you want to bring a gift to the person you're going to be meeting with and negotiating with. You need to know, is it a woman? Is it acceptable to give a gift to the woman rather than to the man? If she invites you home, do you need to give something, bring something to the elderly? Let me give you some examples. So we lived in Guinea, West Africa, and families that come and live in the United States, when they are going to go back to West Africa to visit their family, it is going to be unacceptable for them to show up and say, I don't have any money, I didn't bring you a gift. They need to bring something, okay? In accordance to that culture, when Marcel and I came to the US after 3 years of living in Africa, I literally made a list of the people we were closest to that I felt I needed to bring a gift to. I had joined a women's association, and we met twice a month, and we ate together, we celebrated together. In fact, they had adopted me because I didn't have family, and when we had our youngest daughter was born in Guinea, the women from the Women's Association said, we are adopting you and we are going to throw the big party that celebrates the birth of this child. It's a naming ceremony. It's a beautiful Muslim ceremony. And so they said they were going to offer this party for us. And of course, my husband had to pay, but who cares, right? Um, they, in someone's yard, they did all the cooking, they bought material and made dresses, all matching dresses with me, which is something that families do. All the men's family dresses in the same material, all the women's family dresses in the same material. And you can see who the clans are and all of that kind of thing. And so when I came to the US a year later, it was very appropriate for me to look for something that I would bring back to them. Now, I had the option of an expensive gift to the president of the association, but something she could share with everyone, or a simple gift to every woman in the group. Being that probably 95% of them were Muslim, I bought headscarves. I bought beautiful headscarves that they would want to wear, um, and as respectable married women, and that's what I brought back to them. Women who I was a lot closer to, I bought a secondary gift for them. Yes, very expensive. Um, but let me tell you, the honor that I brought them by understanding their culture and living within it and bringing them the things that they understood in their culture as me honoring them went miles into um, an understanding and building up relationships. So understanding these understanding a caste system, understanding attitudes towards um, individualism versus, and we'll get into this in chapter 3 as well, but the attitudes into all of these things is so vitally important um, to a business person traveling. So I hope this gave you a little bit of background and an insight into the systems and the structures that influence culture.